Stop working.
Why are you a supporter of Dan Malloy?
Well, Dan's done an incredible job for the city of Stamford. We lived in New Canaan, and just because of what Dan's done and the way he's brought the city of Stamford back from where it was 10 years ago, we felt that he could do the same thing for the state of Connecticut. While the rest of the state's lost jobs over the last 10 years, Dan's created 5,000 jobs in the city of Stamford. He's got a great master plan for the city that takes into consideration a good downtown, increasing development, but making sure that we get affordable housing in the town. We've got regulations in town where any new development of more than 10 units, 10% of the units have to be below market rate, and that means affordable to people who are making less than 50% of the mean income in town. It's things like that. His commitment to people, to the kids, to make sure that there's a health insurance program for the kids and then for the adults. I mean, to me, if you take a look at what's being done in the state now, it's strictly incrementalism. It's a program that says we can do something for transportation, but doesn't fund enough to do a real job. It takes somebody with the courage to realize what has to be done, who wants to be governor for the sake of what he can do, as opposed to somebody like the current governor who's governor because she wants to be governor and not for what she wants to accomplish.
Okay.
When Dan was first elected mayor, his police chief instituted community policing, which Dan was very much in favor of. And that was really the very beginning of the crime reduction in Stamford. The police being out in the community, the people in the community having direct contact, and that went a long way towards the beginning of that crime reduction.
Now, why should I, as a undecided voter in Connecticut, seeing that there's a lot of undecided voters and we have a big primary coming up, why should I vote for Dan Malloy over John DeStefano?
Well, I was in the same position prior to the convention, and as part of our Democratic Town Committee, I needed to make a decision on which way I thought we should vote. And I looked at, I attended one of the debates, and I also looked at the websites of the two candidates. And based on that, I thought that John had a very good record and a very good statement, but Dan's positions on open space, Dan's positions on how he was going to grow jobs, both appealed to me to be stronger. And finally, there was a certain character to Dan and the way he presented himself. It seemed to me that he was a more formidable candidate in going up against Jody Rell. And I thought he had a better prospects as a Democrat to win in November.
Now, let me ask you a quick question about undecided voters. Like I said, again, there's a lot of undecided voters in the state. What advice would you give an undecided voter in terms of like learning about these candidates? You said you went to a debate. Should they go to the website? Should they come out and see Dan speak? Well, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, no, I think if you can get to one of the debates, I understand there was one today and there are more scheduled between now and the primary.
Right.
I think seeing these two men who are both excellent candidates, I mean, I think we should realize as Democrats we're very lucky to have two men who've done so much for their respective cities over almost a decade. So they have quite a record to run on, and I think both are positive records. So we have a very important choice between two very good candidates. I think seeing them in person, seeing their character when they are faced with questions and how they articulate those. Some people say, well, gee, anybody can give a good answer to a question. But I'm a person who believes that words are important, and how people use words talks about the way they're going to communicate with the people of the state as well as the people of their staffs and the legislature to get things done. Words are important, and I think Dan has a much better control and a much better grasp of the policies and the way he articulates his policies. Again, I'm not that sure that if you put he and John in a room, they have that many differences on fundamental policies, especially relative to the Republicans. But I think when you hear Dan describe those policies, that's what gives him an edge in my mind.
Dan Malloy, and the 5th Congressional District obviously includes Danbury. So we're here tonight to celebrate Dan's momentum and think a bit about next steps and salute our movement. It's the primary theme.
All right, now how do you think about the turnout here? You think the turnout's good?
Absolutely fantastic. We've got people from Oxford to Southbury to Stamford, and of course quite a few here from Danbury.
All right, great. Now how do you feel about opening up a place here in Danbury?
It's absolutely the right thing to do. Dan won the convention by less votes than that margin by which he won Danbury. So Danbury, in a lot of respects, is the city that made it possible.
Right.
It's the right place to open our very first regional headquarters, to be followed by regional headquarters in Woolcott, New Britain, and Waterbury. And not just in the 5th city alone. So we're certainly carrying forth the momentum from the convention, and we just like everybody to be a part of the excitement. We're having a phone bank here every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday night from 5:30 until 8:30 p.m.
Okay.
We've got at least 6 lines here. Everybody's welcome. We encourage people to come down to become a part of the political process and come out and support their candidate.
Okay, and of course, if anybody wants to find more information on Dan Malloy, they can go to
www.danmalloy.com or email me. I'm joe@danmalloy.com. jo@danmalloy.com.
How do you feel about Mr. Malloy opening up his offices down here?
Very happy that he's got this presence now here in the city of Danbury, here in Western Connecticut. It's very important that we get the message out, because we can't expect the regular media to do it. And this is about the Democratic Party and getting Democrats to turn out on August 8th, just 2 months from today, in order to make a decision as to who our candidate for governor is going to be. Now, I know both the candidates. I know John DeStefano, mayor of New Haven, and I certainly know Dan Malloy, the mayor of Stamford. I've known them both for quite some time. And last winter, as they're making the rounds, both came and visited me in my office at the Capitol. To talk about their candidacy, to talk about why they were running, to talk about what their vision for the state of Connecticut was. And they're both very interesting men, but I wound up deciding to go with Dan Malloy because I thought he had a better grasp of the issues. He had a real agenda that was prompting him to run, as opposed to wanting to run and then having to collect a series of issues to run on. And he cared very much about the state of Connecticut. And I think for anyone who's trying to make up their minds, they need to listen to the kinds of things that he's talking about. He's starting to talk about transportation needs, which in this part of the state especially, here along the Route 84 corridor, needs an awful lot of work. It can't all go to 95 and the Merritt Parkway. It can't all go to 91. There are other parts of the state. And I think Dan understands that. I think he has a better plan to extend health care insurance to the underinsured in this state without necessarily taxing businesses, which is what his opponent has suggested. I think that we're going to be really wrestling with the big Megillah of energy and energy prices over these next few years. I think he's a little better attuned to what's going on in a kind of a global sense on those issues. That's going to be a very difficult one to deal with. There's no easy answers. There'll be a lot of easy phrases, but there won't be a lot of easy answers to deal with this. And when he came in, I gave him about 15 minutes to do his usual spiel. And I said, okay, let me ask you some policy questions. And I was asking some rather difficult ones. And I'm a real policy wonk, so it's kind of stuff that insiders worry about. What would he do about the systemic deficits built into our budget? How would he define the spending cap differently? Those kind of things. And he actually had answers to them that satisfied me. And when I contrast that with the Rell administration, everybody loves Jody Rell. I love Jody Rell. We're good friends. I was with her today. But I don't think there's a vision there. There's a little stagnation, I think, a little resting on laurels that weren't earned. So we have a big job ahead of us because we have to engage first the Democratic voters of the state of Connecticut and make their choice for who the gubernatorial candidate is going to be, and then we have to engage all of the voters in the state of Connecticut to make a real decision about governor. I've been in office 18 years, which means I'm one of about 9 Democrats in the House who actually served the last time there was a Democratic governor. And as I described it to my colleagues, it's better. It's just better because the priorities are right.
All right, we're here with Joe De Silva, chairman of the Democratic Town Committee here in Danbury. Big day for you here.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
Great turnout.
Pretty enthusiastic crowd. It was better than 50 people. I didn't do a count. It's tough to count in a room because it's a crowd of 50 in a room for 30.
Right.
But it seemed to go well.
Yeah,
everybody seemed to like it. With people from all over. 5th Congressional, and we had some lead over from the 4th.
Oh, okay, great.
From Oxford, which is the 4th, from Southbury and Fairfield, New Milford. A few supporters of Dan came up from Stanford. It was a we had a lot of people from Danbury, obviously. I thought it went really well.
Let's say I'm an undecided voter. There's a lot of undecided voters here in the state. The new Q poll came out, showing that there's a lot of people still on the fence, don't know who to put between Dan Malloy or DeStefano. Seeing that you're a big supporter of Dan Malloy and you are in charge of the Democratic Town Committee here in Danbury, could you explain to my readership why they should pick Dan Malloy over John DeStefano?
Well, it's a legitimate question because it's a tough question. 2 excellent candidates, 2 great mayors. The reason why I'm supporting Dan, we go to Stanford and you look and you see what Dan's done in Stanford. It's a tremendous job in the last decade. We've created 5,000 new jobs, 4,000, 5,000 new units of housing in Stanford Center. And for Danbury, that's an important issue because we're talking about how to best grow downtown Danbury right now. And what isn't good things. And what Dan's done in Stanford is a good thing. Dan this morning released a universal health care proposal, which is something that is critical for the people in Connecticut. Over 200,000, 300,000 people without insurance in Connecticut need insurance. Number 1, it is a social question. Number 2, it's a business question. Small business can't afford health care for their employees. Employees can't afford to live without health care. So I think Dan has the plan that will resonate with voters, and will resonate with voters in important places. Part of getting elected is your ability to win. Personally, I find Dan to be a charismatic candidate, a hard-working candidate. He works as hard at getting everybody else's votes as he's worked at getting my vote going into the state convention, which I believe he is. He'll win. His work ethic is incredible. He will run very well against Jody Rell in the 4th Congressional District along the Connecticut coastline between Greenwich and Bridgeport. That's important. Jody Rell cannot win this election unless she runs strong in those areas. It is critical to a Republican gubernatorial candidate's success to run strong on the Gulf Coast. If she doesn't, the Democrat can and will win. I believe Dan presents the best chance of running and winning, siphoning off support and eating into Jody Rell's critical base in the 4th Congressional District. Mayor Stanford will likely win Stanford. Will gain votes in Norwalk, in Greenwich, in Darien. Probably won't win Greenwich, but Dan will get more votes in Greenwich than a normal, ordinary Democratic candidate likely would in a regular election. I think that gives us our best chance to win. He'll appeal to urban voters and suburban voters. His lieutenant gubernatorial choice, Mary Glassman, is from Simsbury. She has connections to West Hartford. She has connections to New Britain. She has connections to Avon, the whole Farmington belt. She will run very well there. She has a large base of support there. She's an outstanding candidate for lieutenant governor. She could be governor if in the event that she needed to be. She's qualified. She's credible. So I think those things combined make Dan just the better choice for this election this year.